we have engaged Nexus Community Partners today. They are doing a presentation called A New Path, Overview of Employee Ownership. And I'm going to turn the show over to Christina Nicholson and Lavasha Smith. And with that, welcome, and here we go.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Christine. We appreciate it. I'm Christina Nicholson. Glad everyone could join us today. Very excited about the information we have to share. And with that, we will get started.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lavasha Smith. I am a program associate alongside Christina in the Worker Ownership Initiative here at Nexus. My background is a master's in organizational leadership, and I was also a part of the North Star Black Cooperative Fellowship with Nexus as well.
And I'm Christina Nicholson. I'm the program manager with the Worker Owner Initiative here at Nexus Community Partners. And for those of you who are not familiar with Nexus, Nexus is a local nonprofit that supports strong, equitable, and just communities, focusing on the interconnectedness between authorship, leadership, and ownership. And today we'll be talking about the ownership path. Glad you're here.
Alrighty, so I'm going to talk a little bit about our ownership path, as Christina mentioned. So we work under the ownership umbrella as a worker ownership initiative, and our goal is really to bridge that gap or to close the gap, the wealth gap here in the Twin Cities. And so we are technical assistance providers. We provide services to business owners who have existing businesses, who are considering transitioning their business to co-ops. And then we also work with startups. We also work with startup companies as well, helping them with things like business planning, governance structure, as it pertains to worker ownership. Our specific focus is focusing on those businesses that have or have a plan to have employees of color from the BIPOC community. And so let's talk a little bit more about what co-ops are before we talk about our business structure and the services that we provide. So there are many different types of co-ops throughout the US that you'll see here on the slide. One of the things that I like to hear when I hear people think about what is a co-op is co-ops are grocery stores. And although that's a good example of a type of co-op, there is several different types of co-ops. And a co-op is actually a business structure that you can file your business entity under. It is really geared around the shared ownership. Some of the other differences are it has levels of membership. There is shared decision making, so one member, one vote, and it's really centered around the owners benefiting from the product or service.
Thank you. And in terms of worker ownership, there are really 3 employee ownership models here in the US that most folks are familiar with. The first is called an ESOP, or an employee stock ownership plan. That one has the structure that lends itself to larger organizations. So for example, Bob's Red Mill, maybe you've bought their flour. They're actually an ESOP. Their packaging says they're employee owned, and they are. Their employees own a stock option for the business. There are also worker owner cooperatives, and that's going to be the business model that we focus on most today and help unpack a little bit. There are also employee ownership trusts. EOTs are really focused on keeping the business operating in perpetuity and are more traditionally used in Europe than they are here in the US, but they're also becoming something that you may hear about when you hear about employee ownership. So while we won't touch on it today, it does exist, and it's something we're happy to talk more about in the future if you have interest.
So the business conversion process, this is really a high level overview of the business conversion process, but we are going to look at like the target audience and some of the benefits that you can receive from transitioning your business to a co-op. So our target audience are business owners, again, who are looking for an exit or looking at restructuring options. The goal is to sell the business to the employee so that the employees benefit as well. And some of the benefits here in yellow, you'll have a potential buyer The buyers are the employees, and so they are right there, they're accessible. Those are the people that's putting in the work, in the hours. So it's kind of like, why not consider them as a potential buyer? We ensure that you can get a fair sales price, and that you're coming away with some profit as well as a business owner. There are tax benefits, and it's really a controlled transition process. So here at Nexus, with the Worker Ownership Initiative, we walk alongside you in that process, as well as your employees, to make sure everybody's comfortable, they understand the language, and that they're ready to transition that business. And really securing the legacy is important as well, to making sure that all the years and the time, sweat and blood that you put into building your business is not left behind, and that you're passing it alongside people who share the same values as you. So understanding more about the succession options that we just spoke about, there are several options to transitioning your business as a business owner. You can sell them, it can get acquired, you can consider employee ownership, or you can shut your operations down. So let's look at a few examples. When you're thinking about selling to your family members, yep, you'll preserve your legacy, you can pass it down generationally. However, you may or may not walk away with a fair market value. A lot of times we see that business owners may sell to their family members at a discounted price so that they could afford it, and you're not getting the full worth of your business. The same, you may or may not get tax benefits, and you may or may not retain your employees. The same with acquisition. We're not sure if the legacy will be preserved. Sometimes people can come buy you out and they don't share the same value or idea, and they can create a whole different business. The same thing with the market, it's questionable. There are no tax benefits, and retaining employees may or may not happen. They may have their own employees that they have in mind for those positions. And so keeping that in mind as well. As far as closing down, I'll come back to employee ownership last, but as far as closing down the operations, of course, you're not preserving your legacy. There is no value to you. You don't receive a profit. There are no tax benefits. And then all your employees are unemployed. And that's not good for our economy, as we can kind of see right now what the economy is looking like. We want people to have jobs. When you're considering employee ownership, all of these can be options to you. You're preserving your legacy, you're getting a fair value, tax benefits, and your employees now have a stake in the business, as opposed to being an employee, but they are actual owners and they are committed. So we talked a little bit about the benefits for the employer. This is more so for the employees. Why should employees buy in or consider this option? In a nutshell, high level, they'll make more money considering this model, and the business grows faster, as we've seen from research.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of selling the business. In terms of how the actual operationalized selling of the business happens. As Lavasha said earlier, we at WOI walk alongside you. We help determine a fair sale price, and the deal terms are finalized. We help partner with both the owner and the employees who are negotiating the deal to make sure that there's a transparent process, and that we are protecting the interests of the owner in terms of the outcome they're looking for financially, as well as protecting the interest of the employees and making sure that the sale price is one that the business can cover in terms of its future revenues. At the point that the sale price and deal terms are finalized, we then transition the business to an employee-owned business, so it becomes a new entity, and that entity obtains a loan. We will talk about some common myths later in our conversation, but one of the myths is that the employees themselves need to come up with all the funding to purchase the business, and that's not true. So we'll talk more about that. Finally, the loan is paid off over time through future revenue. So again, when we're partnering with businesses, we want to make sure it's a healthy business, that it is generating profit, and that we can use that profit to ensure that the employees are able to pay off the loan that they obtain when the business is purchased. Another common conversation is, where does the money come from to purchase the business? That's a great question. So glad you asked. Thank you, everyone. So the first part of it is that we ask that the owner finance part of the business. And what we mean by that is that they do not take all of the sale price out of the business at the time that it sells. In other words, they're willing to have some of that retained in the business and financed through a loan. The CDFI or bank lending that happens is 50 to 70%. So typically what will happen is we only will look at loans for approximately 50 to 70% of the purchase price of the business. That way there is less of a risk of the primary holder of the note being fully at risk for the purchase of the business. And then there is an employee buy-in, but that share purchase for employees to become owners of the business is not really significant enough for that to contribute to the overall sale price or purchase price in this case. So again, that mythology around employees having to come up with the money themselves to purchase the business isn't true, and we'll talk more about that. So in terms of employee ownership readiness factors, as I touched on earlier, these are some of the things we look at when we're determining whether or not the business is a viable business for the employees to purchase and to grow over time. The first thing we're looking for is to partner with profitable companies. So we're looking for companies that have good financial health for the past 5 years. These are established companies that have a record of return for the owners. Understanding that in the midst of COVID, there's been a number of issues and a number of downturns for healthy businesses prior to COVID. That is something we take into consideration, and we look at past revenues before COVID as well. We're looking for experienced employees. So we want the business, if the employees are going to purchase the business, we want to make sure that these employees, that there's at least 10 of them. So there's a healthy group of folks to share both the profit, but also the responsibility of running a business day to day. And then we're looking for a proven track record. So again, we want a proven business with years of experience, a minimum of 5, but ideally more. And we'll talk a little bit about the number of businesses we think fit in this category, and you may be surprised by that number.
Thank you. So we'll talk a little bit about the business landscape here in the Twin Cities. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Silver Tsunami, those are the businesses that are owned by business owners 55 plus who are nearing retirement. And so looking at this slide, this is looking at the numbers nationally and in the Twin Cities. So nationally right now, we're looking at 2.35 million businesses that are owned by baby boomers. And then as far as the Twin Cities, a little over 26,000 businesses are owned by baby boomers. And so we really want to make sure that we're working with this audience and helping them have a plan. Down here at the bottom, a fun fact is that 80% of owners don't have a succession plan. And so we want to be able to help create that plan and help business owners transition their business. And a little bit more in depth to make this real for you guys here in the seven metro area counties. Just looking at Hennepin County, for example, this data was collected by Project Equity, which is a partner that we work with. But they did this really cool study pre-COVID, but the numbers are very crucial. And they looked at the 7 metro counties and the businesses that are actually owned by those who are 55 plus. So here in Hennepin County, there were a little over 13,000 businesses with owners in the 55 plus community. That translates to 179 employees with a payroll of $8 billion and a revenue of $40 billion. Some of the industries that these business owners work in are accommodation, admin and waste, arts and entertainment. And you'll also see down here at the bottom, professional services, retail, trade, transportation, and warehouse. Those are where most of the employees lie. So those are the most common industries right now that we're seeing.
Thanks, Lavasha. So to make this even more real, we wanted to scale this down to the size of one business. So Happy Earth Cleaning Cooperative is a business that exists in Hennepin County. They're in the city of Minneapolis. And Happy Earth Cleaning became a cooperative recently. They're a partner of ours. They began as a cooperative January 1st in 2020, so right before COVID hit. So Happy Earth had a husband and wife ownership team. They had been running the business for a little over a decade. They were turning a profit. It was a healthy business, but as they were getting older, they were looking for a succession plan. As part of that succession plan, they were planning on moving out of state and moving closer to family on the West Coast. So when they started looking to see what would be the best outcome for the business, they realized that the people that had the most experience, that were most likely to carry the business on, were the employees themselves. They had a strong work culture. They were connected to their employees, and they wanted to find a way to ensure that the employees would still have a job after they sold the business. They started looking at different options, and they found us. So they partnered with Nexus Community Partners and the Worker Ownership Initiative, as well as their national partners, Project Equity, and created a path to sell the business to their employees. So one of the things that we want to talk about is this triple bottom line. When it comes to Happy Earth, all three of these items were addressed. We'll talk a little bit about how those apply in a larger spectrum, but for Happy Earth, here's how it showed up. They had a minimum wage. They had hit that $15 an hour. They were paying $3 an hour additional hazard pay at the onset of COVID. And now with the profit that they've made with their employees, they're able to start their wages at $18 an hour. So through the employee ownership program, they were able to understand the business model. They've been supported in 2 years as part of Thrive, which is our post-sale support program that we offer. And so now their employees are growing. They have business and clients booked through next March, and the starting wage is $18 an hour. So these are jobs that retained in the city and are owned by their employees. So it's pretty exciting. All right, let's see. And take it home, Lavasha.
Thank you, Christina. That was a good example. So as Christina mentioned, the triple bottom line. Again, we just want to reiterate that business owners get to preserve their legacy. The employees also get a stake, and the community retains those businesses that are really important to them and that lines up with their values. And so we hope that you can support this movement and work alongside us.
That is so fantastic. And I love telling this story. It makes my heart smile and my head, let me say. So how can you help? The most important thing for those of you who are interested in attending the webinar today is to tell people about our services. We welcome referrals of business owners or advisors. They're always welcome just to call and ask us more about the services we provide. Thanks to our generous partnership with Hennepin County, we have consulting hours available that we can provide. Lavasha and I both do intake partnerships where any business owner who is interested in learning more about worker ownership, we do a free half-hour information session. I think we've got 2 booked next week. And we just talk to owners. Here's what it could mean for them. Here's the opportunities, and here's the benefits and potential challenges. On average, it takes approximately 1 year from the start of the process to fully convert a business from a single or small group of owners to a worker ownership cooperative. So it's not a small endeavor, but it's a powerful endeavor and one that can definitely engage both owners and staff in building the kind of future that is healthy and incorporates shared success. Questions? We'd love to hear from you all in the audience and see if there's any questions you have that we can answer today. We'll take a look at the chat and see if there's anything we can offer assistance.
Yes, please add your questions to the chat. I don't see anything right now, Lavasha and Christina, but we might have a shy group. So let's just give them just a minute. And perhaps you were just that amazing.
Yes, we answered all questions till the end of time about worker ownership in 25 minutes. Our work here is done.
Okay, we do have a question. It comes from staff. I only have 5 employees. Are there any other options if we wanted employee ownership as a future?
That's a great question. Let's partner with this one, Lavasha. I'll answer the first part and maybe you can jump into the nuts and bolts of it. We like 10 employees as a start simply because there's a lot of work that goes into employee-owned businesses. But I've talked to folks that have less than 10 employees. I think you have as well. Is that right, Lavasha?
Yep. Mhm.
Okay, so really what we're looking at is how viable the business is. If it's only 5 employees, how willing are they to do this lift in addition to their daily duties? And so it would definitely be worth having a conversation to learn more about the business. We've also had conversations with local owners who are planning for 1 to 3 years out. And so we help them plan what it will look like and sort of what a good jump point would be for them to return to this idea of worker ownership.
Yep, I'd agree. I don't think I'd add anything. I would say, if you do have more questions like that and think this is for you, feel free to reach out to us and set up an intake, and we can definitely walk through the kinks with you and work things out.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks a lot, Steph, and thanks, Christina and Basha. So has a question. What kind of transition timeline should businesses expect as a baseline?
Yeah, I think Christina hit on this a little bit in the presentation at the end. Typically 12 to 18 months, it really just depends on how much time people have to put into it. But again, like I said, we walk through, finances, the business plan. We really want to make sure things are in line. So it is a little bit of a process. And it is on top of your daily duties, but we try our best to work around your schedule and to work with you to make it as streamlined as possible.
Mm-hmm. I would say there's kind of 3 components to the transition. The first is feasibility. That usually takes us about 3 months. And that's where we talk about that window of the performance of the business over time, how successful it's been, profit it's been able to generate over time. Once we determine that the business is healthy and a good buy for the employees, then we spend approximately the next 9 to 12 months actually building out that transition with the owner and the employees, coming to an agreed purchase price, training the employees on governance and day-to-day decision-making, and developing board strength within the employee base so that they will be able to understand their role as board members and as employees. That takes about 12 months. And then it takes about 3 months to actually finalize the sale, to make sure the lenders are lined up, that we've done the bylaw and article filing, and that the new business model has been set up with the state. So it is not for the faint of heart, but it is for folks who are really interested in building out these opportunities.
All right, we have a question from Steph. What's the typical cost to work with Nexus?
That's a great question, and it varies. So typically we look at partnering with Project Equity, and we do what's called a percentage of EBITDA. So the earnings before income tax, appreciation, and amortization. So typically it's a percentage of that. The range can be anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 for just a feasibility study, up to a percentage of the profits of the business. So it does vary based on the size of the business and their profitability. But that first chunk, that feasibility, is a flat, typically $5,000. But again, through partnerships with Hennepin County and other partners, sometimes we can subsidize that cost depending on the needs and the size of the business.
Thank you. Do we have other questions from the group? I don't see anything new in the chat. I appreciate all of your responses, Christina and Natasha. I'm gonna give just another second. I think, seeing no further questions, we might wrap up our presentation today.
Okay.
So,
So
Christina, any other finals? Oh, here we go. Oh, forgot myth
Yeah.
busting. Pardon
we
me.
are finals.
You have a little bit more.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
that's
I'm going to
okay.
mute myself now. Please carry on.
So when Lavasha and I were getting this presentation together, one of the things that we talked about is kind of in our shared work, what are the questions that usually come up for people kind of when we do intakes. So Lavasha had some really good ideas around kind of myths around cooperatives. So I'm going to turn it over to her to kind of talk about some of the ones that she hears about a lot.
Yeah. You know what? I think one of the favorite ones, aside from the grocery store one, is finding someone to sell my business to is too difficult. The employees are right there. You know, these are people that you're building relationships with, people that you're trusting with your business when you're not there to run the operations, people that have invested. And it's kind of like, why not at least consider them or give them the option to have a part in the process and, you know, have some more responsibility as far as an owner. And so I think that's one of my favorite myths. How about you?
Yeah, I know. I love this. Aside from my favorite myth, which is cooperatives have everyone staying in the middle of the sales floor playing hacky sack, one of my other favorite myths is that owners are the only one that benefit from the sale. And that's actually not true. We always want to make sure it's a healthy business that's generating profit. When we negotiate the sale price, we always want to make sure that even after the loan payment is made to the owner, that there's cash available to keep the business healthy. And potentially, if the new employee owners hit the benchmarks of performance and supersede them, there may be profit sharing even in the first year that the business converts to a cooperative. So there's a lot of potential both for the owner who is being bought out, but also the employees who are owning the business and may have an opportunity to implement some new ideas that help the business grow even more. What's another myth that you love, Lavasha?
You know, let's see. We have some good ones. So as far as our population, we talked about it in the presentation, that we don't work with just owners that are 55 plus, although we want to, you know, try to target that because we do see that there can be a shift, or there may be a shift in the economy if those business owners decide to sell or close the business down. But we work with people of all ages, sizes, demographics, things like that. So you can definitely work with us if you're not in that age range, and you can also, you know, stay on your business as well. So you can transition and become a worker owner, or you can sell the business. And so I think that's
that touches on a future myth that I'll get into. But my second favorite myth is I haven't heard of anyone else working at a worker owner cooperative, so therefore it's not a popular business model. That's a myth. There's actually we're eclipsing 500 worker owner cooperatives here in the United States, and it's growing every day. We're excited because we just finished supporting a new worker owner cooperative. We've got a press release coming out later this afternoon, so stay tuned on the Nexus website and our socials for that. But more worker owner businesses are cropping up every day. So not only is it a viable model, it's a model that's gaining a lot of traction.
Are they all grocery stores, Christina?
You know, shockingly, they are not. Thank you for asking.
What kind of businesses have you seen that are worker ownerships?
I love working with you. So there are there's a number. There's tech companies, there's restaurants, there's cleaning companies, there's construction companies, there's trucking companies. There's all kinds of different business models. And so that's the exciting thing. This structure can be applied to any range of businesses. And there's really no limit to the size or the kind of business that worker ownership can work for.
Awesome.
What's your third favorite myth, Lavasha?
Funding. There's no funding available for technical assistance. I see someone, Zoe, put something in the chat as well. But there are people that we partner with. We mentioned Elevate Hennepin County and other partners that we partner with that can help subsidize these services for you all. So if you meet the criteria, we can help front some of the costs for like the feasibility and things like that. So don't let the cost or the numbers scare you away. When you do the intake, we can talk about that process, and making sure that you do meet the criteria, that you're in the right area geographically, and walk through that with you as well. Another thing about funding as far as employees, and Christina, I hope I'm not taking one of yours.
You are not.
Okay.
You are not. There's
As far as
plenty of rumors to go around.
funding for the employees, some business owners are concerned that their employees may not have the money. Again, there are funding options, and we go through CDFIs, which are Community Development Financial Institutes, and they're very specific in they have tailored services working with certain populations, and so we do use that as an avenue for funding the business to help with some of those costs as well.
Yeah, that's great. My last myth is one for owners, and that's the myth that if they transition or sell the business to employees, that they can no longer work there. And that's not true. Oftentimes there are worker owner cooperatives where the original owner will sell the business to employees, but stay on for a number of years, both to help guide the business and help it succeed, but also because all they've ever wanted is to work shoulder to shoulder with their team and have a successful business that provides positive outcomes in their community. So in many ways, it helps them share the responsibility of running the business day to day and creates a healthier work climate because all the work that's being done is super transparent. The employees are the board members, the owners are the employees. And so the former owner can be the general manager, or they can be a frontline employee. So it doesn't mean that you have to walk away from the business. It simply means there's an opportunity for the owner to profit in the short term and potentially in the long term by staying on as an employee. So it really is a win-win.
I'd agree. That's all I have. Does anybody else have any questions that came up or comments?
Any other myth to bust?
I think those are good. I think that's good myth busting for a first round. I feel confident about this.
Okay, I don't want to cut off the flow here twice. Okay. Okay, well, I think if we don't have any further questions, the myth busting is finished. I'd like to really thank Lavasha and Christina for putting this great presentation together. As mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, this has been recorded. We will have it available on the Elevate Business YouTube channel. I'll send a link post-event because I believe I have all your registration information. And again, please engage with Elevate Business. It is, I think, a very creative private-public partnership between the Minneapolis Regional Chamber and Hennepin County. You can learn more at www.elevatebusinesshc.com. And on that site, you can find webinars like this, also from partners like the SBA, DEED, and other folks. As well as the opportunity to connect with our technical assistance providers to receive no-cost pro bono services. And launching in the middle of this month, I guess, which is shortly in the next 2 days, a reinvigorated peer-to-peer group program where you can join folks in your own industry or different industries for regularly occurring group learning opportunities. So thanks very much again to all of you in attendance. And with that, I will close our webinar. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to our presenters.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.